Morgen, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren. Danke, dass Sie an diesem wunderschönen Sonntagvormittag ins fensterlose Burgtheater gekommen sind. Es begeistert uns sehr. Diese Veranstaltung findet in englischer Sprache statt und daher wechsle ich jetzt die Sprache. My name is Maribel Kühniger. I am the Program Director of Erste Foundation's program Journalism and Media. And in this function, it's my special pleasure to welcome you today. I do this on behalf of the four partners of this series of debates, Europa im Diskurs, Debating Europe. Since almost 20 years, these are the Burgtheater, of course, the Institute for Human Sciences, Der Standard, and Erste Foundation. We also have to celebrate something today, so I wish you all happy International Women's Day. Let me try a transition from Women's Day to the subject of our discussion today, media freedom under pressure. Journalists usually name their sources, so I will do this too because actually someone inspired me to make this transition. Recently, earlier this week, also in the context of Women's Day, the Austrian-German-Iranian writer Nawa Ibrahimi opened a keynote speech with a long list of problems, if you want to call them problems, that women still face, unsolved since eternity, from gender pay gap to hate crimes, femicide. Then, to mention something positive, as she put it, she named the Epstein files. Well, excellent writers know what a good plot twist is. Epstein, Nawa Ibrahimi recalled in her speech, was first convicted in 2009 and after a deal only for a very short time in prison. After his release, he remained as active and powerful and criminal as we know now as before. The fact that he was again indicted and imprisoned some 10 years later had to do with one woman, Nawa Ibrahimi's example, that one woman can change the world. The investigative journalist Julie K. Brown, and this brings us now to today's topic. She revisited the closed case, spoke to dozens and dozens of victims, read through thousands of pages of files, and thus brought one of the biggest criminal cases in history to light. By a series of articles published in 2018 in the Miami Herald. Actually, she did what journalists do. The historian Timothy Snyder called journalists the heroes of our time. I subscribe this 100%. But it's also sad to say so, because that means that the work of journalists has to be done against serious obstacles. Journalists are threatened or sometimes even killed for what they do for their profession. Or they are fired because the newspaper cannot pay salaries anymore. The topic is huge. It has to do with governments that see independent media as a threat, with the power of algorithms and big tech and monopolies of big tech, with collapsing business models of media, with the fragile good of trust within polarized audiences, with the deconstruction of facts or factuality as such, with the threats of AI and cyber war. And I think I could continue, a bit like Nawa in her speech. So where is the plot twist here? I put my hope in the fantastic panel on stage today that will guide us through the current situation in which fact-based information seems to be no longer the fundament of our societies, and fear and emotions are used as weapons in public discourse. So let's hear why and how they still do their jobs as journalists or analysts. Please welcome today's moderator Gerold Riedmann, the editor-in-chief of Der Standard, who will present the distinguished guests. Have an enjoyable debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maribel, and a very good morning from my side, and thank you to the partners of this longest running discussion series for Der Standard, Debating Europe. For our discussions, we are joined by 3 distinguished guests, experts in their fields, and I'm happy to welcome Alexandra Borchardt. She's a journalist, researcher, teacher, media advisor, has an inside perspective of newsrooms, has a long time worked for Süddeutsche Zeitung. She's been doing studies with the Reuters Institute for Journalism at the University of Oxford, and if someone knows what's happening in the media landscape, you are. We are joined by Mateusz Kostolny as an editor-in-chief and co-founder of Denik N from Slovakia. We just were joking this morning that me being born and raised in Vorarlberg next to the Swiss border, and you traveling here an hour, 50 kilometers from here, and coming from another country. It's strange what these national boundaries, borders in Europe still do to us. The world looks different from the other side of the Danube, and he had experiences being the editor-in-chief of SME, one of Slovakia's largest daily newspapers, when independence came under threat under new ownership, and you're now the editor-in-chief and co-founder of Denik N, and we will hear about that a lot in the upcoming minutes and in the upcoming 1.5 hours. We're joined by Martin Gergely, editor-in-chief from HVG, HVG, one of the last major independent publications in Hungary, we should say. You also previously served in a newspaper that was bought by forces, a little bit with Austrian help, we can discuss later on, with forces around the government, and had then very, very abruptly shut down, which made you, after that hostile takeover, join HVG. And so we have cases from Hungary, from Slovakia, and the media landscape that we want to chime in the first place, because across Europe, journalistic organizations, journalism itself is being tested not only by political forces, but by the finances as well. It's a changing landscape for journalism and how journalism can remain alive, trusted, viable in this new time that some of us thought they had an idea and then AI came. That's the setup we are having, and I guess let's start with the challenges that we have in the media landscape, because this is a general discussion that we're having. It's not at the median target that we're having from time to time. It's not a specialist discussion. But Alexandra, if you would be here in Zurich, Switzerland, not in Vienna, this would be a different morning. It is the day where the Swiss are having a popular vote. They're having them regularly. This is a very important day, because also not only because there are some popular votes today, but in Switzerland they are discussing again if they want to have a public broadcaster. And in German, that most of us are familiar with, it's called Halbierungsinitiative, so they want to cut the public broadcaster in half. Is that a move right out of the right-wing playbook that we have seen in other countries as well?
Well, it's not only out of the right-wing playbook, but if I were in Zurich this morning, what you just said, I think my heart would beat even faster than it does now. It's quite something to be here on stage, I have to admit. So because it's really, there's a lot at stake. Public service media are the most trusted media, at least in countries where there's still a level of independence of public service media. So if you look at the Reuters Institute's digital news report, everywhere in Austria, in Germany, public service media are the most trusted, and they're also the ones that have to serve all of society, that have to serve young people as much as old people from all different walks of life. So cutting that budget in half in Zurich in particular would mean they would no longer be able to serve all of society. And commercial media, for their own commercial interests that they have, and rightly so, they have to, they much more attuned to serving certain segments of society, like the well-educated, not necessarily the young people, because young people don't buy subscriptions, so they have a narrower corridor of serving people. So really cutting funding for public service media in half is difficult, and what we can also see is that in countries where there's no strong public service media, like in the US, political forces from left and from right have a much easier time to drive polarization because the audience moves either to the left or to the right, and you lose the room in the middle where there is some agreement and places where people can still convene and come together and discuss important topics. So polarization is much further advanced in countries with no trusted public service media. Then again, there's also other cases, we will discuss that later, where public service media is actually co-opted by government, where people have been fired who are not in tune with government propaganda. That is a different case, but I'm talking about strong, independent public service media here.
Public broadcasters is one of the pillars of democracy, of information, often idealized, but in countries where this still is in place, and even in countries where this seem to be in place, they are built rather close to politics because somehow there has to be, they have to be sought over by the public. Who is the public? It's the elected politicians. And maybe asking that out of an Austrian perspective, but how can we build them more resilient, far enough away from politics, but not in the midst of politics? Because some of the broadcasters seem to be very much influenced through their boards, through politics, by governments.
Well, first of all, and I wouldn't only say that to public service media, but to all media organizations, you have to do your homework. You have to implement reforms yourself and be really, really close to the audience, because the closer you are to the audience, the stronger your relationship with the people who are actually consuming you, reading you, watching you, listening to you, the harder it gets actually to win an initiative like today in Zurich. So a close connection to the audience is sort of an insurance against political forces taking over. Then obviously you have the boards that you really need to staff. You need mechanisms of control, and you need also to diversify obviously the platforms, the programs, and you also need to really make public service media, as much as other media, also move to the platforms where the people are, so that people can really identify.
Is that you? Is that no? We have
wrong here?
It wouldn't be the Burgtheater if we wouldn't have a backup microphone here.
I was wondering about that. Maybe I was leaning back too hard. So that works well too. So building close connections to the audience is the most important insurance against public interference. And then obviously, when there is political interference, there's also the audience, and the audience can move away or voice their opinions and say, hey, this is not what we expect from our public service media.
And that's an interesting moment for journalism, for media management, to see if the public still is there, if there's a community around what they have been doing. Matusz, from a Slovak perspective, there had been RTVS. Now the letters are mixed, and it's not only the letters. How fast can it go when a public broadcaster is kind of turned inside out?
It's pretty fast. I mean, it's only a question of days in Parliament and then it's gone. But to be honest, we have to say that, or I have to say that our public broadcaster was weak years and years ago, before it changed the name and changed the law. They changed the law and created a new institution so they can completely run it with a new director and completely run the news and have it. It's not a public TV anymore or public radio. It's a state radio, a state TV, and they do in this state radio or television. They do what the government wants them to do, and that's it. But that was already in the mid-90s. That happened in mid-90s in Slovakia, because that time our government and Prime Minister Mečiar, he didn't want to have independent public broadcasters, so he completely pushed and ruined the public service. And since then, We had years when it was better, we have years when it was weaker, but never, the public broadcaster never again stood as a strong, independent media. So we had to actually adapt to the situation that we don't have a strong public broadcaster in Slovakia. And that was something which in the end helped also us to create independent, smaller media, private media, but with some public functions or some public dreams. And yes, in all those global surveys, probably Slovakia is one of the weaker countries where the public broadcaster is not strong enough. But in the end, we have still independent media in Slovakia, even because that we don't have this public broadcaster, and the state, the government, is trying to kill it. So we found our strong, independent journalistic voice as something which comes from the struggle of the public broadcaster.
How would one have to imagine the reach? Where are the masses in the market? Are they listening to, I don't know, entertainment? Does politics play not the role it used to play? And is everyone on Netflix and they don't care if there's a public broadcaster or journalism? How would you see the market?
It's probably more or less the same, but without the strong public broadcaster. So we have a private television, which is the strongest one. It used to be owned by Americans, but they left the market 3-4 years ago. Now it's owned by the Czech business company, and this private television transformed into a semi-public television because they do the entertainment thing, which private televisions do. But their news used to be the best news in the country, and people really were like watching those news, not the public news, public television news, and trying to support the television. 2 years ago, they changed the general director of the television, and they started to cooperate with the government, or not to be that critical towards government, because the government, the new Prime Minister Fico, the old new Prime Minister Fico, started to attack this television. And the new owners said, okay, so we want to do business with the Slovak government. We don't need to have problems with this. So they pushed the best TV reporters out of the television, and there's still struggle and fight in the television, and we still don't know if the television is still independent and okay, its news department, or not. But a lot of people consume entertainment, of course. Television is still the biggest player in the game, but more and more people consume what they want to consume, if it's Netflix or internet or YouTube or whatever, and we have to adapt to the situation.
And you're talking about journalism here in special, and things that are originating from the countries that we live in. From a Hungarian perspective, how lively is that market, and is there an age difference so that elderly generations stick with what they're used to and everyone else is on Instagram?
Well, the elderly people still consume public broadcast, and it's a state TV and a state radio now. And I can tell our Swiss friends, if a populist government is running the state broadcast, it is double so expensive as under normal circumstances. It's mainly because propaganda is dull. It's unwatchable, so they have to spend an extra amount of money to sell it. So what they do, for example, in Hungary, they buy the rights on sport broadcasting, and then place 1-minute news blocks, bulletins into those broadcasts. And those are the insane 1-minute news blocks where the West is a hellhole, where the suburbs of Vienna is Gaza City, and Hungary is heaven on earth, thanks to Mr. Orban. I think this shows that after a while, government messaging is just so simplified, it's unwatchable, and they have to penetrate those audiences which don't care about news. So the game is not alter the news that is read by people who think, but it's to bring news to the people who don't want to listen to news because they won't fact check it. They just listen to the music radio in the car repair garage or watch football games at night, and they have to be targeted with those really nasty propaganda pieces. So this is how it became. And for all those who want to consume news, it's another game. And in that game, independence matters. Quality matters, because you don't want to read news which end up always the same way, that Orban is a genius. If you read HVG, it might come out that Orban is right on this or that. So our stories are not pre-written. And I think that's something audiences like and audiences are coming for. And so, yes, the market has been altered, the market has been poisoned for the last 16 years, but as long as you can bring quality stories, there's a chance of survival.
And I'm not ought to start as an Austrian from Vienna to talk about the Hungarians. However, are people seeing the difference between real journalism and kind of North Korean style news bits inserted into soccer games?
Not everyone. Not everyone pays that much attention. And of course, our world is starting to get really strange, and I know that a lot of us get stressed. Even I say that I'm out for a weekend in Vienna and I won't open the news app to look at the news because they make me sick the last couple of months. And that happens to a lot of people. So yes, there's a chance that people turn away because they are so overstressed by all those things that are happening around. And if they do, they are much more vulnerable to propaganda stories about the Ukraine war, whose fault it is, and what's happening. And this is what Orban is trying to use. He is fear-mongering to win an election where he is trailing in the polls. And if people start to turn away from news because it's so much emotional stress, that's going to be dangerous.
So news avoidance, as this phenomenon of not turning on the news, not reading the latest developments in Iran or be it Ukraine, or the local politics, is news avoidance something that autocrats kind of like? Alexandra?
Yeah, sure. I mean, they really like people to listen to their own stuff, to their own propaganda, and many politicians now exploit the new opportunities of the platform economy. They have their own podcasts, they run their own, they do their own TikToks. They are present on all these channels that they previously didn't have. Politicians used to need media to spread their messages. They don't need that any longer. So I guess politicians still like it when people listen to their news. I'm not sure if they like people to avoid the news completely, because obviously they want to get their messages across. Still, news avoidance is a rising trend, but that is more connected to the world situation. People just feel like the world is getting so much more dangerous. It's so confusing. It's really horrible. So news avoidance for some people, or for many people, as also the Reuters Institute's research shows, is more a matter of self-care. And I mean, I guess you in the audience, every one of you has probably avoided the news, even these days, when you feel like, oh, you don't check first thing in the morning what happened in Iran, because you say like, oh, this is a beautiful Sunday out there and I want to enjoy the sun for a change and want to be with my family. So news avoidance is a rising trend. The Reuters Institute has taken that number from 2017, actually, and it has increased. But yeah, the world situation has also worsened.
And how has the situation for media changed over the last years? In investigative journalism, one of the principles that we like the most is follow the money. Look where money goes to. There's a possibility of finding out something new. Where is the money for journalism coming from, and how has it changed in the last years? How have the newsonomics or the economics of news shifted over the last years?
Yeah, that depends on what the last years are. If you look at the past 20 years, the business models for news have changed tremendously. I mean, you all know that advertising was the main revenue source for media companies, like for Der Standard, the quality newspaper. Advertising was the main revenue channel, and people bought subscriptions for print news, but that was just a smaller share of the altogether of the general revenue of media companies. So that has changed, that has shifted. The advertising revenue has changed to the platforms, and at the same time, the platform environment had changed. It used to be that quality media controlled their own platforms. If you say like a print newspaper is a platform, or a radio channel is a platform, or a TV channel is a platform. But now news consumption has become much more split onto different platforms, and people use different platforms where they consume the news. But the publishers don't control these platforms any longer. I mean, Der Standard is also on different platforms on social media, but I mean, you can post stuff there, but the algorithms that distribute the news across these platforms are not controlled by you. So it's actually a double struggle here. It's a struggle for money, and it's a struggle for, how you get your content into these platforms where the people are. And obviously there are still other revenue sources for news. Actually, membership models have really increased a lot, particularly in environments where people feel there's no trusted public service media, there's no trusted general news any longer. I need to pay for my news. I need to support an organization that you guys represent, because I want to make sure that journalism is still financed. And actually the likelihood that people pay for news in a news-deprived environment are much higher than in an environment where you feel like, there's so much free news around. But that is also a model that is promising, but it's hard work to actually convince people to give money to news organizations.
Matusz, we all know in journalism the headline or the slogan, the catchphrase of the Washington Post. On their masthead, on every day, there's the words, "Democracy dies in darkness." And it has been discussed a lot, especially after Jeff Bezos, the owner, so a rich guy owning a newspaper, which has always been the case in some cases. But I bet you have different views on that, given your story and your experiences with SME. How is it when ownership changes, and how changes that the business foundations of journalism?
It depends on who's buying the paper, and how he acts, because Jeff Bezos from Washington Post acted like a hero for journalists for years, and then suddenly after Trump came back to office, he completely switched the position, and now he's the dark guy who is like really killing the journalism and putting it in real dark. In our case, that was 11 years ago. I used to be editor-in-chief of a liberal daily paper. And one of our oligarchs in Slovakia, a financial group which was very well known in Slovakia for corruption, Penta,
had been in the gorilla scandal before.
So they were really like that's the nickname for corruption in Slovakia. If you're a company like this, and they bought 50% of shares of the paper I used to be working for from a German publishing house, which left the market. And I didn't want to work for them, so I just immediately, on the same day they bought it, I said, okay, so I'm leaving the paper, and that's it. I used to be the editor for more than 8 years. I used to work there for more than 20 years. That was my life. I started as a student when I was 19 years old and left the paper after 20 years because I didn't want to work for those people. And to my surprise, 50% of the newsroom left with me. So we started a new paper, media. It's not a paper anymore. I mean, we have a paper edition still, but it's like a tiny thing for, I would say, for older people, but for people who love to have newspaper in their hands. Okay, still some of them, and we created the new media, Dennigen, which symbols independence, because N is the first letter for independence in Slovak. So it was a new independent outlet, and we created it as a subscription-based model. So
Can you remember back what gave the impulse of not changing jobs to whatever, becoming a press secretary for anything, or complaining or protesting? You started something new.
I mean, me as person, I wanted to be a journalist. I love to be a journalist, and I love it still. So I wanted to do something. And for my colleagues, we felt such a strong support by our readers. That was huge. I mean, people like supported us, and they sent us even money. That was not only that they were sending us messages that you are so good and please continue, but when we realized that we have support and we have knowledge and we have the best quality journalists in the country, and we want to continue, we want to start something new, we knew that we know how to create a system which would allow us to base the model on subscriptions, digital subscriptions. So we started, and we had 8,000 subscribers since the very day zero, the very first day, 8,000 subscribers. We started a newsroom with 45 people, everybody in Slovakia, but not only in Slovakia, also in Czech Republic, Hungary, and other countries. I used to meet colleagues from different newspapers in Central Europe. They were like, okay, so it's not possible. If you start something like this, you have to do it with 6 or 7 people. You start slow and small, and then you grow up, if you're lucky, and then you become successful. We knew, or I knew, that we need to be big enough to not to be only commenting on news made by other outlets, because I thought that there would be no news in Slovakia anymore, because the paper I used to work for was owned that time by this corrupt Penta group, and the public TV was weak and not strong enough, as I told you before. So I thought, okay, so we need to produce real news, and we need to produce investigative journalism. We need to do quality journalism, not only opinions, because everybody has opinions, and it's not that important to write opinions. So we started with 45 people, and we thought, okay, so if we are lucky, then we'll survive 1 year, and then we'll see. And it's already 11 years. Today we have 145 people working for us, so we tripled the number of journalists working for us. We invested all the money we earned to journalism, to people, to reporting, and we have 75,000 subscribers, digital subscribers, which is in a country with 5 million people, like Slovakia, quite a good number. We are the biggest the biggest media outlet in Slovakia, like in terms of subscription. And we're bigger in terms of subscription than the old paper I used to work for.
So it is possible?
Yeah, it looks.
Marton, different country, different story, and we will dig into that later on, but only for the differences. HVG is not a hip startup that formed 10 or 11 years ago. It has a legacy part of the business. It used to be a magazine, kind of.
It still is.
Yeah, how did that... and magazines are, as Alexandra will, I think, agree on, are the hardest to monetize, kind of. But if they are weeklies, it is possible, and you're doing a tremendous job in a very hostile environment. How did that develop in the time that you've joined them?
Well, we have this success story of being a news magazine which was created in the first cracks of communism. The magazine dates back 50 years, and the abbreviation would stand for Weekly World Economics, which we are not using anymore because, first of all, we are one of the biggest portals in Hungary, so we are not weekly that much. Of course, our focus is away from world economics. But in the early 80s, in the Gulag communism of Hungary, world economics was the first field where you could write independent pieces. So they were writing about French agriculture, but actually were talking about Hungarian agriculture. They were talking about Iranian, I don't know, mining, but they were writing about Hungarian mining. So HVG has this story of helping to build back that system, and was the liberal institution in the 90s to lead a democratic new public discourse. It's really interesting because our newspaper was founded by younglings. The oldest guy was the founding editor-in-chief with 33, all others were in their 20s, so we have this really nice feeling that we still have some of the founders working with us, writing at least every couple of weeks. And we have a lot of young people in their 20s joining us, believing in democracy, believing in journalism, which is really a fantastic feeling. This is what I sometimes say, that we have these three big generations: the big generation which created the newspaper, the young generation which is there to help to build a democratic Hungary, and there's the middle generation, mine, which has all these stories of companies buying into your newspaper, shutting us down. So these 16 years of standing in the rain, and who knows how much lies ahead of us. So we have this middle generation which have seen a short period of opportunity for a democratic Hungarian public discourse, and seeing that being shattered by an overall political and economical view on media, that they somehow have to serve other interests, and of course by a two-third majority party which has cracked down, which has led a crackdown on journalism for the last 16 years.
Alexandra, that sounds like strong media with a community that not only loves journalism but needs them, kind of, and a connection that grows and that is fostered. Sounds like the opposite how AI is working, right?
That is true. I mean, community is really the the key word here, and I think every media organization is asked to really build communities and to foster strong connections with their audiences, with their users, to make them less vulnerable to what's ahead in the AI world. And I see lots of young people here in the audience, and young people in particular are getting used to accessing information very differently from older people. They ask ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude to really get their information, get their news, and they get in a very personalized way, depending on what they demand. And that is really tricky in the AI world, because actually AI runs the risk of making journalism invisible. When you ask a chatbot, or you do a Google search, and then you get these Google Gemini sort of Google summaries on top of the AI summaries on top of the news, you don't necessarily know what the sources are. You would have to dig deeper to check what the sources are. So actually, very often you're just happy with what you read, and you sort of assume it could be okay, and then you don't know about the hard work that is actually below that, because lots of the AI stuff that the AI is also trained on is the hard work of journalists, the very costly work of doing research, investigations, whatever, is really the lower layer, but you don't get the idea that there is some hard work to be done. So it's really very important for media organizations to foster direct relationships to their audiences, just to make sure audiences know they exist, and that even young people also know there are media companies, there is journalism. There are people who are working for this environment of trusted information, and it's not just a miracle that's popping out of an AI-run machine.
And so that's a given answer for you, that the question, is there a willingness to pay for journalism? And back in the old days, a newspaper needed to be printed, needed to be distributed. Everyone said it's a quality thing, but then you pay €1 or €1.50 for it back in the day. Is that for distribution, for printing? Is that for the paper, or is that for journalism? But now we see there's a willingness to pay for journalism. This has been discussed a decade ago, and it's working for quality media. Is it working for everybody? And is it endangered by AI? That's where I want to go.
It's interesting that I mean, willingness to pay is very different, and depending on the country and the environment. And it's actually easier to make people pay for journalism in countries where there were working models of people paying for journalism. Like if you were used to pay for a print newspaper or for a print subscription, you're probably more likely to take out a digital subscription. In countries like the UK, for example, Great Britain, people weren't in the habit of buying subscriptions, but they walked to their local newsstand and paid there, and then it's like a very tangible thing. You have this paper in your hands, but they're not used to paying for subscriptions. That's actually, in the UK, willingness to pay is very low, whereas, for example, in the Nordic countries, willingness to pay for digital media is really, really high, like comparing 6-7% of willingness to pay in Britain with 30% in Norway or Finland. Even on top of that, in Germany, it's also not that. In Germany, it's sort of 14%. It's sort of the same, I think, in Austria.
And it developed over the years.
And it developed. It's increasing. And the interesting thing is that the generation that's the least likely to pay for news is sort of the generation that grew up with the internet is free thing. Younger people are often more willing to pay because they are used to paying for like Netflix, Spotify, whatever. So they grew up with, if you want to have something that serves my interest and serves my needs, then I have to pay for it, even if it's digital. But sort of the middle generation that you were talking about is the least likely to pay for news. So really, there is an opportunity here to monetize young people, but you can only monetize young people or make them pay for news if they really feel like this is something that is related to their lives, and they really feel they can identify with the coverage, they know that their needs are taken care of, then they're really willing to pay for it, but not with just any kind of news product just because a media organization says like, oh, this is for sale, you better pay for it.
So we're sitting here in the Burgtheater this morning. Haven't mentioned that several times, and discussing quality journalism in endangered surroundings. Yeah, kind of an Ivy League discussion from time to time. People out there on X, formerly known as Twitter, keep asking the most asked question these days, Alexandra. Grok, is this true? And then Grok, somewhere out of California or Texas or I don't know where, decides if this is true or not. I mean, is AI changing the fundamentals of journalism, or are we taking it serious enough? Or what would be your recommendations? Is that community stronger than Grok can determine if something is true or not?
First of all, that is a real trend, and that gives me hope that young people tend to be very critical and ask if something is true. They want to know sources. They really try to confirm what they see on first glance with AI, if that is really true. So that gives me hope. But obviously, there is a huge challenge because not everyone is like that, and it's very hard. I mean, media companies don't really have control over that. So. Like, you know, if you have Elon Musk buying X and then deciding about the algorithms and who sees what and whatever, obviously that is something that is beyond media companies' control. That's why I was saying the most important thing is building reliable relationships with your audiences. But it gives me hope that actually young people tend to want to look behind the scenes if they're interested in something, not with everything, but if they're really invested in something, they really do that. On the other hand, I don't want to get this into this very negative view on AI, because AI can also help journalism to be closer to their audiences, to be more personable, to really have personalized offers for people, for example, by changing formats, changing from text into video or video into whatever, an audio file and whatever. So meeting audiences' needs is easier. So it's easier to reach a broader audience. And for example, a very important use case that young people have with news and other people also is like, could you summarize this for me and could you explain this to me? Which also tells us that as media organizations, we might have been mistaken a bit in the complexity of our coverage, because very often people really crave for explanation. They crave for really, for stuff being made much easier to digest and to understand. And we media companies very often, or media organizations or newsrooms very often had this feeling like, oh, we need to sound really sophisticated because this is for the super sophisticated audience. And AI can actually help us to go beyond that and make news more accessible to broader audiences.
Martin, building on that, is an authoritarian leader of a state, is Orban in fond of ChatGPT and Claude, or is that a problem for, as Alexandra described? Because you can ask what's really going on with a video that had been surfacing on some website. Is that true or not, or what's the story behind it? And you will get, at least at this point, a universal answer.
Well, Orban is not son of the digital age. He, for a long time, didn't even have a mobile, so he had still the old type of mobiles.
Let's go for Nokia.
I think they are, but his crew is, of course, very much improvising with all the AI tools. They are creating a lot of fake videos with it. They are trying to be on the top with the meme game, which is not really happening for them, I think. But it's still a revolution which is hard to see through. So a new data shows that, for example, Meta has started to use on Facebook an algorithm which is 40% AI-driven, and the AI-driven algorithm can make a difference between manufactured outrage and manufactured likes and manufactured reach against a genuine reach and mobilization. So it comes that 4 years ago, Facebook favored Orban very much, and now he is trailing behind Magyar, his opponent, although Magyar has half of that much followers. But the AI algorithm sees that Magyar is having much more natural likes and posts and comments on his page, so it gives Magyar a much bigger reach as it's giving Orban. So I think AI is hard to look through, and it somehow adds to all this development which started with the social media platforms. That before that, one part of the media's of our job was to decide what can have a reach and what shouldn't. That only about 15 years ago, big media outlets had the responsibility to think about what's true and what's not, what can have a big reach and what doesn't. Because gossips or false stories had to go through traditional media to get the reach, otherwise they were killed. And this is why, perhaps it started even a bit before. And this is why populist movements and autocrats started to censor media, because they thought that censorship, which will help them to stop the reach of stories they don't like. And that has changed. There are some pedophile allegations in Hungary, which we didn't report on because they were so out of touch with reality. And they reached the parliament, even though no independent media has reported on it. And it enraged a deputy prime minister, Zsolt Semjén, who was named as one of the possible actors. And at that point, I realized that the politicians still think that we somehow have the power to decide what's out there and what isn't. But it's not true anymore. So I think our job has become much more to say what's right and what's not. So if you see a story out there somewhere and you come to us, we are the ones who can say you that it's true or not. And that's a new responsibility. It's not the responsibility of reach anymore. It's the responsibility of deciding false or not. And this is what we will be measured, I think, in the future.
Good to have you here this morning, because I have true or not questions for you. We are 4 weeks away from the elections. 5 weeks away from the elections. So that was false. That was true. Yeah. That was a quick one. So second question. Well, point taken. Second question is, how full of hope are you that something might change in 5 weeks? Is there hope, or how is Orban doing with his AI-style Trump campaign?
As a journalist, I don't really think about elections in the scope of hope or not hope. I analyze it, and I see that under current circumstances, Orban is trailing, and that we have two very different approaches to these elections. Orban still wants to win the narrative war, somehow a big cosmic explanation of unique Hungarian way in a world in turmoil, and with him as the only safeguard that can keep us safe. And we see on the other side someone who thinks that election campaigns are won on foot, that he is out in the countryside giving speeches by the dozens. I don't know how he does that. And he says that in the world of AI, the only thing that can't be faked are live events. And of course, on Facebook and YouTube, televised live events. That's the only thing that can't be manufactured. So we see two very different approaches. And I think whoever wins is going to be studied for a long period of time in the international politics. Because if Orban pulls that off, so if he can win this election, he will have the crowning in propaganda. He will show the world that after 4 miserable years where the Hungarians had sky-high inflation, where the GDP hasn't risen compared to 4 years ago, where all the things they promised haven't been kept. If he pulls that off, I think nobody will want to govern anymore. They will only want to have the same tools that Orban has. And if Magyar wins, there's going to be a blueprint how to oust a populist movement with every resource the country only can give.
Matúš, in Slovakia, are there also foreign and state actors active, not only the government in distributing news? Speaking of disinformation, is there a pro-Russia narrative? There is a pro-Russia narrative also towards Ukraine, of course. But is that all propaganda or from the own government, or are others in the market as well?
We are not in the same position as in Hungary, where the media or the state media are really propaganda media. In Slovakia, okay, the public TV, but the others, there is a lot of independent media, and the government is not able to easily spread the propaganda into media. But there is a lot of disinformation outlets. I don't call them media, but there is a lot of disinformation going on.
How do they look like? Look like media?
They look like media, yeah. They have a web page and they're pretending to do journalism. I mean, it's fake, but that's what they do. Our prime minister, he is giving interviews to guys like this. He's not giving interviews to traditional or quality media. He's giving interviews to people who are something between influencers, entertainers, and fake journalists. His ministers, they are talking to people like this. We
have this in Austria.
Excuse me?
We have this in Austria as well.
Yeah, I mean, probably it's everywhere, but we know that the Russian influence is it's probably bigger, maybe not bigger than in Austria. I don't know. Austria is quite tough country in this, yeah. But we know that we have disinformation which is paid directly from Russians. We had a case where our police found a guy who was like taking money from a Russian operator or operative, whatever guy who is in Slovakia. So we know that there is this Russian propaganda going on because it's easy to compare it. Those narratives coming from Moscow, they're spreading around Europe, and in Slovakia they're quite active. Slovakia is one of the countries which is mostly pro-Russian in European Union. Only Bulgaria and Slovakia are countries where like more than 30% of people believe that Putin is a good guy. And even though more than 50% people are in Slovakia happy that we are in European Union, but those 30% of people, they are lost. They are, they lost their direction, or they lost their senses. I don't know. They are probably not able to consume the reality, and they are under attack by disinformation. And the problem is that the disinformation is spread by government. This is unique. This is not the typical situation in European Union, that the government is spreading fake news. That's the operative that they do. The prime minister, he's talking the Russian propaganda. He is spreading the same hoaxes as the disinformation media.
So Prime Minister Robert Fico has labeled journalists like you as enemy of the people, foreign agents, servants of the corrupt elites.
Prostitutes. Snakes. All the time. I mean, he's attacking journalists all the time. I mean, on day one, after he came back to the office 2 years ago after the election, and he became the prime minister for the fourth time, he announced that he will not allow journalists coming from 4 media outlets, Denningen is one of them, that he will not allow us to go into government building because we are enemies of state. Then he changed his mind because we filed, we didn't file it even because it was like question of 1 or 2 days, but we wrote an open letter to Prime Minister that you are breaking the Constitution, and it's against the Constitution, and you have to allow us to go into the government office. You have to allow our readers to have the information. We have the right for information. So he's allowing us to go into the buildings, but mostly he's not answering our questions. I mean, if our journalists ask questions, he will tell that, okay, so you're an enemy, you're whatever, foreign agents, and I will not answer your questions. But sometimes he's answering when he needs it or he likes it. And we are living in conditions like this, which makes us like, for half of the country, we are heroes and people who fight for their democracy and who fight for solid information. And for other half of the country, probably less than half, I hope less than half country, we are enemies. We are bad guys who wants to harm our country and our prime minister, and it's a situation like this.
What does it mean for personal security of your journalists, of the people working for Däniken, and what has that changed for your families?
Oh, it's difficult. I mean, I'm working as a journalist more than 30 years, and never before I thought that, okay, so it's that we would be really like threatened. I mean, that it would be dangerous job. I mean, we knew from the 90s that there were situations where, like, Secret Service monitored journalists. They've beaten some journalists in streets, some cars burned, and things like this. But that was early 90s. And then for years and years and years, I thought, okay, so we are in European Union, and that will not happen, that we would be under attack. Then 8 years ago, they killed journalist Jan Kuciak, young guy who worked for a media outlet called Actuality. And that changed the situation completely. And he was writing investigative pieces which were connected to politics, but also oligarchs or rich mafia guys, let's say it like this. And probably, we still don't know because the trail is still going on after 8 years. One of the mafia entrepreneurs very close to government people ordered that killing. And that changed the situation completely. And since then, I take it very seriously. So every attack, we are trying to process it, but it's difficult because if you know that the police is in hands of people who call you enemies and agents and prostitutes, how can you trust police if the Minister of Interior is a guy who is attacking us all the time? So we're trying to do it. We're trying to work very seriously with that, but it's very difficult. Since day one after the killing of the journalist Jan Kuciak, police offered us to our investigative journalists and reporters who were like very working on more or less same topics, same stories as Jan Kuciak did, that they protect us. Nobody from our newsroom took this protection from police. And I know some colleagues from other news media outlets, they had it for days, maybe weeks, but it's not possible to work as a journalist if you have a police guy behind your neck. I mean, it's not possible to meet your sources if you have a police guy protecting you. So we have to protect ourselves. It's not possible to protect everybody 24/7. There's no way to do it. Yes, for those 8 years, I always talk to my colleagues that this is part of our job. I completely understand that there are people who don't want to work in a situation like this, and some of them quit. I mean, we had one or maybe two colleagues who left the paper because they said, okay, it's too much. I don't want to be a journalist if it means that I could be killed. But all the others continue, and we have to do it because we have to be bringing those stories, and we have to be acting like the real journalists, because that's our duty and that's our job.
Jan Kuciak was not... Yeah. In 2018 it was, right?
Yeah.
It was not only Jan Kuciak who was killed, his partner was killed as well. And he was working for an outlet under Swiss-German ownership, Ringier Axel Springer, that most of the audience will recognize. What has his killing, apart from obviously your prime minister stepping back and coming back again, what has Jan Kuciak's killing changed in Slovakian journalism?
Weeks and months after the killing, we felt such a dramatic support from public. I mean, there were like thousands of people protesting against it, and those people, they pushed Robert Fico to step down from government because he was not, I don't believe that he was connected to the murder. I don't think that he ordered the murder, but he was really responsible, and he is responsible for the public mood, for the environment in society, attacking those journalists, all the time. It makes us to be like targets for people who don't like us. So we felt strong support, but it lasted maybe for 1 year or something like this, and then it ended, and they started to attack us all again. We talk about protection or security more seriously. We changed our standards in the newsroom, in the building. We are trying to be more active. Before Kuciak's killing, I thought, okay, so journalists should be fighting their fights with words. We are part of the public sphere, public place, so if we write about politicians, then we have to accept that those politicians or people will attack us verbally. Now I think that we have to, we need kind of defense. I mean, so we are trying to complain, and we are trying to file lawsuits if it breaks the line, if it goes behind the line. So we are more active in our protection or self-protection, and we are teaching, or we are trying to offer to our journalists courses or procedures how to protect themselves digitally, physically, in the streets, in their homes. We are trying to talk about the digital security, and we are trying to be active, because I think the most important thing is that we are able to spread the news. That's our biggest protection. If we write about it, then it's more difficult to hide it and to make a silence.
Yeah, I would also like to add, and I mean, I was super impressed by what you've been doing. But the killing of Jan Kuciak and also of Daphne Caruana Galizia in Malta has actually increased activity of the EU in terms of press freedom, media freedom, quite a bit, because we have a Media Freedom Act now that most certainly is really the result of pressures like these, because I mean this happened not just in any country but within the EU. So actually this is important, and people in the EU expect the EU as an institution actually to protect media freedom much more. I'm involved in a committee for editorial independence at Czech publishing house Economia, and we issue a media freedom poll for Central European countries, also both countries, every year. And the support for EU activity on regulation, on also regulation of platforms in terms of spreading misinformation, algorithmic manipulation, whatever, is quite intense. And I think that also happened as a result of these incidents, these crimes, also of the lack of really finding the murders here, that people really say press freedom, media freedom is so important to us. It's an important value, and we really, if our own governments can't help us with that and can't support us and sabotage that even, then we need the EU to take action, and that is actually puts it on a higher level.
Martin, in Austria, we have one party who happens to be the strongest party by votes, that has expressed that their like for journalists is not too high. Apart from that, and as people in my newsroom will remember, being named a Scheißblatt, that had been the farthest it had gone. Are we not seeing the signs? Is it already too late, or how are you seeing the Austrian perspective?
I don't know.
You studied in Hamburg.
I studied in Hamburg.
Du sprichst wunderbar Deutsch.
I do. I do have Standard on my phone, and I get your pushs, and I like your live features. So I'm less worried about you, but I have to confess I don't have that much time to really give thought about the Austrian state.
What I meant is it happening slowly? I mean, it's even in Hungary. It's not that the censors joined the newsroom.
Well, you know, to quote Bertolt Brecht on that stage, you know, what is a bank robbery compared to the founding of a bank? In Hungary, Orban, with the unlimited resources, was able to buy up institutions. So it was not coming down to threats, to physical attacks. They have shown what Strache is calling in the Ibiza video, "Zack, zack, zack." First with the public broadcast. So in 2010, as they took over, they have created a new company. They unified the news agency with the editorial rooms of state TV and radio. There's one single man on the top who can be legally called a news falsifier, as he very much did so, and we went through the courts to be able to name him like that. And after they were done with the state TV, they started with the public, with the independent and private media outlets. And we have now talked a lot about German, Swiss companies or American companies leaving the markets in Slovakia or in Hungary. They have left Hungary with great deals and leaving Hungarian media outlets in the hands of oligarchs. So it was Axel Springer, it was Ringier, it was Pro7 Sat.1 AG, it was Bertelsmann, Funke, Rus media, just to call the names of those who, after a while, thought that they are choosing the money and leaving the country. And leaving meant that newspapers were shut down, like Mein Népszabadság in 2016, which was ambushed and with the help of Heinrich Petzina, an Austrian, let's call him a businessman, who played as a frontsman to Hungary's #1 oligarch to buy up my newspaper and part of the regional newspapers, and to deliver it into the hands of Orban, and to make it possible that in an ambush they have closed down the newspaper 10 years ago. And then, you know, we did protest it. Nothing really happened, or the only thing was that Strache then got heard of Petzina and how he is doing this for Orban. This is what is told in the Ibiza video. So FPÖ wants this, likes this. They think that if they can buy up news media and if they can change 5-6 people, they can run the organization, because everyone else gonna just be silent and have them do it. So this is why I think Matusz's example is so fantastic and so uplifting, that it's either Strache is right, and then you change 5 people and tuck, the paper is in your hands, or it's like Matusz's story, or the Telex story in Hungary, where people quitted and they didn't help to turn a paper into a propaganda machinery and created something new. But overall, in the last 16 years, we always had the feeling that under the line, Fidesz is winning. That every closed down or conquered newsroom means that there are some smaller outlets being opened, but the reach can't be established again, and that Fidesz is controlling more and more parts of the media. It was a hard 16 years, because for a long time it seemed that there are no consequences. So I always tell this story. After the last elections, 2022, one of the best investigative journalists we had quitted our job and went to be an electrician, and then later told the anecdote that the first time he has created a small circuit and then switched the button and it was light. That was the first time in 10 years that something he has done professionally had a consequence. So this was the long, horrific way through the dark forest of the Orban years. And we don't know if another 4 years of this darkness is ahead of us, or something what we can't predict what comes. But this is the situation. I think right now, in the last 2 years, there were consequences. There was a consequence that the head of state pardoned someone who helped a pedophile. She had to step down. A new political movement has risen. So there were things. There's no end to politics. There's no end to history. And Orban has created a masterful plan to keep his voters under a bubble. And he has used those 1-minute news blocks to shield a part of the votership from anything else than his own worldview. And what we now see is that they are panicking because the whole thing was built so that the biggest chunk of voters are under this bubble, so the rest can do whatever they want. HVG can be politically afforded till it can't be, and then we get it. But so long the biggest chunk is under that bubble, we are good. But now what's happening, that there's an even bigger voter base outside of this bubble. And now they are panicking inside because they are not reaching the others out of the bubble because they don't know how to do it. They had forgot to do it. They can only talk to their own echo chambers, but that's not bringing them enough because they have now to somehow get to voters who are not listening to their echo chambers. And it is, I think my former colleague who's an electrician sees it with some sense of Genugtuung. What's the English word for it? That right now the whole construction is failing their creators.
Alexandra, as we're nearing towards the end of this discussion, and Martin said uplifting, there is an uplifting part to it. Let's concentrate on how we will meet sun again in 12 minutes or so. Is Däniken a building plan for the future of journalism under that needs to be bulletproof, so to speak? Are there other tendencies that make you think positive about the future of journalism?
I mean, it certainly works, which gives me hope. I tend to be this glass half full person, because you could always say like glass half empty, glass half full. Something like that works particularly in a politically very restrictive environment, because, I mean, and that gives me the most hope. People are not stupid. Audiences just don't accept propaganda. They just don't sit there and are victims of some information environment. They can, you know, they can really get up and leave. For example, also when you see in the US now with what happens with CBS, CNN being built by the son of being bought by the son of Larry Ellison, and apparently in the intention to be transformed into another like Trump outlet. People can get up and leave. They can move somewhere else. They moved to you guys. They moved to you guys. Maybe not in masses, but people have a really good feeling for if something is unreal, if it's fake, if it's just AI slop. We talk about AI slop. When all the content is AI slop, just, you know, AI polluting everything, every online platform with just slop, people are going for the real thing. What you described from the campaign is also true. People like real life events. They want to see people in person, they want to touch people, and once they feel the media environment doesn't serve their needs any longer, they want to go to the real thing. And then when there are some new fresh outlets, and there are also other examples for fresh outlets, are being founded that help them meet their needs, they will go there. And that is an opportunity for quality journalism. I mean, we saw that during the pandemic. It's almost forgotten, but trust during the pandemic, trust in quality media really reached a very high level. It leveled off afterwards again, but because people felt like, you know, where do I get trusted information? I have to go to quality media. Even young people did that back then, actually. And so when there's crisis, it's always also an opportunity for quality media to reassert themselves. It's just that media organizations have to grab that opportunity and do their homework and be close to the audiences and not be in that ivory tower. And that is as important now, that media grab that opportunity and turn it into growth, into something important that serves their audiences.
You related again to the young readers, to young audiences. You did a lot of research around young readers. Is that giving hope as well, what you see there?
Yeah, it gave me hope, interestingly, because there's this narrative out there, oh, young people don't care about news, young people don't care about politics, and I mean, even this is proof that there are lots of young people in this room today. People care about media, they care about freedom of expression and opinion, and they want to be served. They want to know what is going on in this world. And it really gave me hope when I did this research also that media leaders from different media organizations also gave me these examples, like when they really put news on formats that young people consume, and if it's TikTok or if it's anyway, if it's games even. Young people really are drawn to this, and they really follow media if it's done in a tone of voice that they can relate to, if it's really with things that are connected to their daily lives, when there's content that is connected to their daily lives, and if it's not that up in the clouds sort of political debates of he said, she said journalism that so much of traditional journalism actually is. I mean, let's face it, traditional journalism needs to go a long way to serve the needs of audiences that are out there. But if they do, there are great experiences to be made also with young people, but not only with young people, also with all generations.
Martin, what gives you hope?
Well, it's really strange. 16 years of Orban means that there are voters who haven't been in kindergarten yet as Orban took over, and he has created a country which is building on nationalistic education and trying to bring up a new generation which is created an Orban supporter. And now we see in the polls that under the age of 30, the TISA opposition party is leading 68% to 9% among this generation. So, and I also see it at home, that I have two sons now nearing their 17th and 15th birthday, and they are very outspoken about their rights, about what is right and what is wrong, and they are also politically interested. So somehow this nationalistic education totally failed them. There is a new generation which wants more, more democracy, more say. They are less into hierarchy. So I see that also in my newsroom, that our young journalists have a much stronger opinion on how they can be treated, what they want in communication with them. So this whole old Habsburg-like world of Vetternwirtschaft and having ranks and giving such gestures towards others, it's shrinking, and there's a much more sense of I want to be part of it and I want to have a say, and that's great. And if this was able to develop over the years, although we had this government, it means that a new generation is our biggest hope.
So, Matthias, final question. The un-Austrian young journalist is approaching you, inquiring or asking you whether or how journalism could be bulletproof in future, what steps to undertake to secure his own profession serves the society to be informed. What would your advice be?
I mean, I really strongly believe in journalism. I mean, I believe that it's very important to work as a journalist because even in years where AI is here and it's all over us, it's still and probably even more important to have real journalists who are talking to people, who are trying to understand their stories, who are trying to dig deeper and to find some information which are hidden or somewhere behind the scenes. This is something which AI is not able to do, and I'm not sure if it's able to do in 10 years, I'm not sure, but for the moment now it's not possible to find it. And our experience says that we are successful when we run unique stories which are completely ours and nobody else understands it or has it or found it. These are stories which are mostly important for our readers, subscribers. People are able to pay for the news if it's quality, well-written, unique, long. I mean, this is a good experience because I remember years ago when everybody told us that, okay, so the future is in short stories and people will read only pictures and 3 or 4 lines and that's it. Most successful stories in our newspaper are long pieces where people read like half an hour along a really good, well-written story. So quality journalism, I think it's possible to do it. We understand that we will be never the biggest media outlet in the country. We will not be competing with boulevard gossip stories or something like this. But we're able to attract 75,000 subscribers, more than 1 million people reading our news on a daily basis, which makes us successful and happy enough to run a newsroom with 140 people and to be optimistic enough that we will survive even next years with AI, politicians, and whatever.
So that's... Those are our final remarks. Those are the last words for this discussion. Thanks to our partners, the IWM, the Erste Foundation, and the wonderful Burgtheater, of course. You will read more about this discussion in today's Standard or tomorrow's print edition of their Standard. You can hear this discussion as a podcast in the oncoming days if you want to recommend it to friends. And there are more opportunities to talk about journalism. That's what I wanted to add. There is not only the Journalism Festival in Perugia that some of you love to travel to or know for their well thought through discussion over the last years. There's also a Journalismus Fest in Innsbruck, where Martin, you had been, and Alexandra as well, I guess, over the last years. Their Standard is hosting there a lot of discussions. So if you want to look that up, Journalismus Fest, that brings you to more around the issues that we discussed today. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for your attention. And tonight here on stage is The Lost Honor of Katharina Blum, die verlorene Ehre der Katharina Blum by Heinrich Böll. So it's both Journalism Day and Women's Day here at Burgtheater. Thank you very much for being here. And this is your applause for Alexandra Borchardt, Marton Gergely, and Matusz Kostolny. Thank you very much for being here. Vielen Dank. Vielen Dank. Dankeschön.